Alright, yo, what's going on? Jaden here from Hooper's Corner. Today we're going to have a look at every NBA team's top 3 trade deadline targets, with the trade deadline coming thick and fast. Let's have a look at every NBA team's top 3 trade targets. We're going to go through all 30 teams. Of course, we're going to have a dream target, a realistic target, and a sneaky target. I'm not going to go through all 30 teams in detail because, quite frankly, we will be here forever, but I will go through quite a few of them in some detail. If you're a fan of the teams that I didn't go into complete deep detail into, please let me know in the comment section down below what you think of the targets and if you think that they will improve your team going into the second half of the NBA season. But without further ado, let's get on to the Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks dream target Ben Simmons, realistic target Marcus Smart, and a sneaky target of Gary Harris from the Orlando Magic. Now, this is interesting. The Hawks, of course, haven't been that good. Obviously made it to the conference finals last season, and this season just haven't gotten up to those heights. The reason that I don't necessarily see either Ben Simmons or Marcus Smart going to the Hawks, because I don't think that John Collins is necessarily that all-star James Harden level talent that the Sixers GM wants, Daryl Morey, in a trade for Ben Simmons, and I also don't think that the Celtics are ready to trade for Marcus Smart. Gary Harris is an interesting prospect for them, especially providing some shooting, obviously the Magic being a tanking team, so I can't necessarily see a couple of those young assets being sent to the Magic, maybe a couple of picks in return for Gary Harris, but I definitely don't see either Ben Simmons or Marcus Smart making their way to Atlanta. The next team, we have the Boston Celtics, of course. Dream target John Collins, realistic target Eric Gordon, and then a sneaker target of Ben McLemore. Now, this is interesting. I think that Eric Gordon realistically is the best that the Celtics can get. I genuinely believe that the Celtics do need a little bit more shooting. Of course, they've had a couple of shooting woes, especially this season, with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown not necessarily being on their A game in terms of shooting. And I think that Eric Gordon, of course, being in a very similar situation to Gary Harris, being on that Rockets team, I don't think that the Celtics necessarily have the assets for a John Collins trade unless you're willing to give up a Marcus Smart, which I don't think they're willing to do. So I do think that that Eric Gordon trade is a realistic one to go for. The Brooklyn Nets, dream target of Jakob Poeltl, realistic target of Dorian Finney-Smith, and a sneaky target of Mike Muscala. This is interesting. This is really interesting. Obviously, the Nets have a very stacked salary cap, so I don't think you're going to get a guy to the caliber, of course, of those main 3 guys there, James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving. I don't think that Jakob Poeltl is necessarily making his way to the Nets this season. The Dorian Finney-Smith one is quite interesting because I do see him sliding in as like a stretch 4, stretch 5. And being that guy there for the Nets. But Mike Muscala is actually very interesting as a guy that they can bring in, add some depth. The only thing that I see being an issue with any sort of Nets trade is the assets and whether or not they have that. They don't necessarily have the picks, and they don't necessarily have a lot of young guys that teams like the Thunder will want to take from them. But if they were to get something done at the trade deadline, it has to be a big man. Has to be a big man, especially with the lack of depth this season that the Nets have shown. The Charlotte Hornets now, dream target Miles Turner, realistic target Nerlens Noel, and a sneaky target of Robin Lopez from the Orlando Magic. Everybody knows the Hornets need a center. Everybody knows that. Mason Plumlee, of course, is not the guy that you want at the 5 spot for the Hornets. Of course, the Hornets have been a very sneaky team. LaMelo Ball, Miles Bridges is having a arguably a most improved player type of season. Scary Terry Rozier. Now you need a 5. You need a 5 there to complete that team. And if the Hornets are realistically looking to make a deep playoff push this season, or at least somewhat of a good playoff run this season, I think that they do need a realistically acquire a guy like Miles Turner. It'll be interesting of how they get it done. I see a deal where maybe you get a guy like Gordon Hayward and even Mason Plumlee to go to the Pacers, and then for the Pacers to send back Miles Turner. The Pacers have indicated that they're willing to sell their guys like either Miles Turner or Domantas Sabonis. Even a guy like Karis LeVert is on the selling list for the Pacers, which is interesting, but you got to look at what they're going to get back. I don't think personally that Gordon Hayward is going to be a guy that Indiana necessarily wants back for Miles Turner. I don't think that he elevates them in a certain way that they want to be. The Pacers are very hesitant on a rebuild or calling it a rebuild or being a selling team. even though they're looking to sell arguably 3 of their main assets. So Hornets definitely need a center. Whether or not it gets done, it's a sort of wait and be seen type of thing. I think Robin Lopez is a decent shout, personally, as someone you can get on the cheap, send a couple picks to the Magic's way, and get a good backup center. Even rotating the minutes between Mason Plumlee and Robin Lopez would be an interesting shout. But honestly, if the Hornets are serious about this season's postseason, then Miles Turner is definitely the guy that they want to go after. The Chicago Bulls. Now, the Chicago Bulls are interesting because personally, I don't think they necessarily need to do anything to make their team any better or worse. Obviously, right now, they're hammered with a bunch of different injuries. When all those guys become healthy again, you realistically look at that Bulls team and don't think they necessarily need any more. This Larry Nance Jr. trade is an interesting one for me because I do think that he sort of elevates this Bulls team. The dream target of Jeremy Grant is interesting because I do think that Jeremy Grant wants a more prominent role in the offense, whatever team he goes to, and I don't think that he's going to get that at the Bulls. So I don't necessarily see that move as being, it's definitely a dream one, but it's definitely not a realistic one. Nicholas Batum is interesting as a sneaky target for the Bulls as well. But again, as I said, I don't think that they necessarily need to push for a trade or necessarily need to do anything drastic, because again, the Bulls have been so good this season. When their guys like Lonzo and Caruso come back, when those main guys come back, I just don't necessarily think they need to do anything else. So I think that if they want to, maybe something like a Kobe White type of trade, make him the centerpiece and maybe add some pieces around him, but I don't see the Bulls doing anything anytime soon. The Cavs. Now, the Cavs are interesting. Of course, the Cavaliers have had their issues in terms of injuries, but the Cavs have sort of, I don't know, they're an interesting team because they're so big. And do you go all in for a guy that sort of elevates that ceiling? Obviously, Brandon Ingram as their dream target. That would be amazing if Brandon Ingram would make it to the Cavs. He would genuinely elevate that team to another level. If you think of a front court of Brandon Ingram, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, that is insane, and I think that would be amazing. But do they necessarily need to do anything? I don't think so. A Goran Dragic trade will be interesting. I don't think that he will stay at the Raptors past the trade deadline, and if he does make his way to the Cavs, I think that he can genuinely solidify this team. Of course, they acquired Rajon Rondo, but I think that Dragic would be a very interesting get for them, especially due to the injuries to Ricky Rubio, obviously ending his season. So I think that would be an interesting move to make there for the Cavs. Moving on to the Mavs, I'm not going to really talk about the Mavs because I haven't really watched a lot of Mavericks basketball this season. A dream target of Christian Wood. That's interesting to see whether or not the Rockets will push for a Christian Wood trade. He doesn't necessarily fit their timeline at the moment, especially with the rebuild that's going on there. A realistic target of Buddy Hield is interesting as well, and I don't think Kemba Walker is someone that they'll go for. You look at the Mavs and you think of who's that third guy, right? You have obviously Luka as their number one guy. Porzingis is there too, but who's that third guy in the Mavericks to make them that sort of contending team? I think that Buddy Hield is a very interesting guy that they can realistically get, to be honest with you. I think the Kings do need to shake up their roster a little bit, and with Buddy Hield going to the Mavs and maybe you get someone like a Harrison Barnes back, that would be an interesting trade there to make. But I do think that the Mavericks will make a trade. But it's going to come down to, can you get that third guy next to KP and Luka, and is he going to complement those guys as well? Let's move on to the Denver Nuggets. Obviously, the Denver Nuggets are such an interesting team, man. They just paid MPJ, and then he got that back injury. Obviously, with a guy like Jamal Murray not being healthy this season, but then you got Nikola Jokic, man, just having an MVP caliber season. They realistically should not be as good as they are right now. But let's look at their trade targets. We got dream target of Derek White from the Spurs, a sneaky target of Dennis Schroeder. I think, man, I like that idea of Dennis Schroeder going to the Nuggets. What they will give back to the Celtics for Dennis Schroeder is interesting. Obviously, Schroeder's trying to get paid, man. He fumbled the bag hard, and he's trying to get paid. But I do think that he has a spot somewhere, and maybe Denver is that spot. He can be that guy to just feed the Joker. Maybe that's an idea that they can do. I haven't watched a lot of Denver basketball this season either. But I do think that they do just need a guy, you know. And obviously Dennis Schroeder will look to want to get paid. If he can go to Denver, show up in this season, and then get paid in the offseason, I think that might be a good move for him there. The Pistons. I'm not going to talk about the Pistons. We just did a whole video about the Pistons just before. But their dream target of Mo Bamba. Realistic target of Patrick Williams. I just don't see that happening. And a sneaky target of Kuz. Okay, I'm just not going to... Realistic. I'm not going to talk about Kuz going there. I'm not going to talk about Patrick Williams go there. I just don't think that those teams will give those guys out. Mo Bamba is an interesting one. I think that they can get it done. But whether or not you can sort of entice Orlando with a package that gives you Mo Bamba, I don't know. Obviously, there's a lot of picks to be swapped. And obviously, both these teams are on a rebuild. So I don't necessarily see how the stars will align here. But I don't know. I feel like Detroit will just want, in the trade deadline, to be honest, like some picks. I think they're just looking to like acquire picks and then seeing what they can get with either what they can get with those picks or what they can get in the future with those picks in terms of trade packages. So I don't know. I'm not going to talk too much about this because I don't know too much about the Pistons, but Mo Bamba is an interesting one. The Warriors. Okay, this is interesting. Kenrich Williams to the Warriors or Mike Muscala to the Warriors as well. I don't think that Marcus Smart elevates them, and I don't think that he's going there either. So let's talk about these two guys from the Thunder. The Warriors need a big man. And watching the Warriors games, obviously, you know, you have the Splash Brothers coming back. You have Clay coming back. You have Steph Curry, and he's having a somewhat low year. The Warriors have Kevon Looney, who currently plays at the 5, but I think, to be honest with you, Mike Muscala would be the target that I'd go for if you're looking at these three guys for the Warriors. I think he elevates the 5 position for them. I think he solidifies that as well. And I don't think that they need to do some crazy Bradley Beal, Ben Simmons trades. I think they're content with the young guys that they drafted. And I don't think that they necessarily need to go balls to the walls with a crazy deadline day trade in order for people to look at them as contenders. Obviously, they're contenders, and realistically they have had a little bit of a slump recently, but I don't think that they need to do anything crazy. So I think Mike Muscala would be fantastic for the Warriors if they were to pull that off. The Houston Rockets. Dream target Ben Simmons. Realistic target Derek White. Sneaky target Rui Hachimura. Okay. Now that's interesting. Very, very interesting. Obviously, the Rockets are in rebuild. Does Ben Simmons fit within the Rockets timeline? No. I don't think that he necessarily does. Do the Rockets have the pieces to entice the Sixers and Daryl Morey to make a trade? No, I don't think they do. So we can pretty much already knock Ben Simmons off the board. Derek White's an interesting one. And someone that I do realistically think that they may be able to pull off with the Spurs. The Spurs don't want to rebuild, right? They don't want to say that they're rebuilding, but I do think that they're in need of one. But then the Rockets are in a similar situation, so why would you just be trading young assets to another team that's rebuilding? Rui Hachimura is interesting as well. I think that he does fit within the Rockets timeline. Whether or not the Rockets can put together a package that entices the Wizards to do so, I don't think that's the case. Who I do think the Rockets will go after is someone that they can get, if they can trade that John Wall contract and then maybe buy out whoever they get. There's talks about a Russell Westbrook coming back to the Rockets. That would be interesting. But I genuinely don't know what the Rockets are going to do this trade deadline. The Indiana Pacers. Oh boy, here we go. Here we go. Gordon Hayward, we talk about him. Dorian Finney-Smith, who would be great for them. And Luke Kennard from the Clippers. Okay, this is interesting. So, obviously, Miles Turner, Domantas Sabonis, Caris LeVert. 3 guys that the Pacers are looking to sell. They have your Chris Duarte's there. He's obviously a young guy that they maybe will look to build around, but I just don't think that this Pacers organization wants to rebuild. It's hard because as I said, I don't know if Gordon Hayward gives them what they want. I don't think that he's a good fit for Indiana. Dorian Finney-Smith is interesting. Whether or not you can entice the Mavericks with a package like that, I just don't think that. I don't know. Maybe you can look at a Miles Turner thing to the I don't know how it would work out. Maybe the Clippers will be interested in a Caris LeVert, but then they just paid Luke Kennard, so I don't know. The Pacers are interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what they do at the trade deadline. They're going to do something, Because one of their big guys, whether it be Miles Turner or Domantas Sabonis, is moving. Whatever happens is a way to be seen. The Clippers, okay. The Clippers definitely need to do something, man. Like, obviously, they've been going on an interesting run recently with their bench guys, but they don't have Paul George. They don't have Kawhi. I think Marcus Morris is out as well. Like, they're just running with their bench unit at the moment. A dream target of Jonas Valanciunas is interesting. Obviously, just got traded to the Pelicans before the season started. But man, he gets buckets, he gets rebounds. That's an interesting guy for them. Yusuf Nurkic is an interesting guy as well. And Kemba Walker. Oh, I don't know about Kemba. They have. I don't know about Kemba. I don't think that's a good get for them. But I do think that someone at the 5 spot would be a good guy to get. Whether or not they have the players to do either of these trades is a wait to be seen. But I do think the Clippers are going to do something in the trade deadline. Oh boy, here we go. The Los Angeles Lakers, dream target of Eric Gordon. Really, they're not getting Kenrich Williams. They're just not. And a sneaky target of Lou Will from the Hawks. They're really going to go with this like retirement home thing if they do go for Lou Will. Man, the Lakers are interesting because the thing with the Lakers is they don't have assets. Like, you could argue THT and Kendrick Nunn are probably the 2 guys that they can trade that will look to, that the Lakers can look to sort of, I don't know, like I feel like the only way that they can pull off a big time trade that changes the outlook of their season is if teams really value the future picks that the Lakers have. The reason I'm saying that, because you look at the guys on the roster and you look at the situation that the Lakers could be in 5 years' time. Let's say, for example, if we're gonna look at it like this, they go for Kenrich Williams and they go to the Thunder. Okay, we're gonna give you the 2020, what, I don't know what picks they have. Let's say, for example, it's a 2027 first. That 2027 first from the Lakers could realistically be a very, very good spot in the draft, because the Lakers, they don't have future upside. And let's just be straight, they don't. They traded a lot of their future away in the offseason to acquire Russell Westbrook. And you look at that Lakers team and they don't really have anyone. Malik Monk is probably their best player at the moment, obviously besides LeBron James, and he's there on like a minimum deal. THT is THT. I just don't know what these guys can get. Maybe it's a package where you get THT, Kendrick Nunn, and you ship him to the Rockets, and that fits their timeline kind of, and you get Eric Gordon back, which helps shooting wise. But I don't know. The Lakers are in an interesting situation. Oh, Ja Morant, I'm on my Grizzly. Here we go. Jaylen Brown, I don't think you're getting, and I don't think they need that either. Robert Covington would be an interesting get for them, and Marvin Bagley. Marvin Bagley would actually be an interesting one for them. I think that's an interesting get for the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies have been insane this season. They have really turned it on, and Ja Morant has been a big part of that. Desmond Bane as well. I don't know what you do with the Grizzlies. Do you shake it up? Because they've been going so well so far. Do you shake it up to really sort of solidify yourself as someone that could go far in the off season? In the off season, I'm just not too sure whether or not they can sort of do that, or whether or not they'll want to do that. But I do think that Marvin Bagley would be an interesting get, and I do think the Kings are willing to make a big swing this season, trade deadline. The Miami Heat, dream target of Dorian Finney-Smith. Torrey Craig, that's interesting. And Paul Millsap. Paul Millsap should not go anywhere, and nobody should be looking to get Paul Millsap. I just don't think that he necessarily elevates the Heat to the level to where they want to be. Obviously, the Heat are contenders, and obviously they want to win a chip, and I think that is prime time for them to do so, especially with Tyler Hero growing into his own. Obviously, you have Jimmy Butler there. Bam's coming back as well. Maybe they make a big swing at the trade deadline for a guy like Torrey Craig. I think that's the most realistic target. Obviously, it's in the realistic target bracket, but I do think that that's a guy that they genuinely could get, especially the Pacers being in the position that they are in, whether or not the Heat have something that the Pacers would want. I'm not too sure, but I do think that they need some bench guys to sort of fill out that rotation, make them a better basketball team, and solidify them as contenders when you look at them compared to teams like the Warriors, like the Bucks, like the Suns. But let's move on. From one contender to another, the Milwaukee Bucks. Man, I don't know. I'm very high on the Bucks, and that's probably because I'm very high on Giannis Antetokounmpo. I genuinely think that the Bucks could go back-to-back this season, and I think that it depends on if they can move Brook Lopez. Now, obviously, Brook is a very, very important part of what the Bucks did last season, but I think that they could be looking at someone like realistically a big man. Nerlens Noel is interesting. Obviously just got paid by the Knicks in the offseason. Whether or not that they'll be looking to move him on is yet to be seen on what the Knicks realistically want to do this offseason. But I do think that Nerlens Noel would be an interesting fit here. Doug McDermott's interesting as well. And Jalen Smith, I don't know if that's something that could be done. I feel like out of all of these ones, I like the Nerlens Noel one a bit more. Maybe you do have to give up a Brook to sort of do that. I don't know, man. Bobby Portis has been doing a decent job at the 5 this season, with just the uncertainty around Brook Lopez. But I do think that the Bucks need a 5 in order to solidify themselves as genuine championship contenders moving into postseason. Obviously, when you have Drew, when you have Giannis, of course, and obviously when you have Chris Middleton as well, you're gonna be a contender any day of the week. But I do think that 5 spot just needs to be solidified a little bit more for them to really, really push. Because man, the Suns are looking incredible this season. The Timberwolves. This is okay, man. You know what? Really, you know what's crazy? The Timberwolves have slowly and surely become one of the more interesting teams in the league because they have Anthony Edwards, they have Cat, they have D'Angelo Russell. Like, they just have interesting guys. And I think that if they add a dream target of OG Anunoby, that could be insane. I think that realistically the Timberwolves should be in the postseason picture. Whether or not they get there is yet to be seen, but I do think that they're within that picture because genuinely they have guys there that can turn it up. I'm very high on Anthony Edwards. OG Anunoby would be great for them. Larry Nance Jr. would be an interesting get for them as well, and JaMychal Green would be an interesting get for them as well. I do think that they'll make a swing before the trade deadline. I don't know who that would be though, but I genuinely think that these guys have a chance to be in that postseason picture, and it all depends on who they can get and who they give up realistically. The Pelicans. Dream target of De'Aaron Fox, realistic target of Colin Sexton, and a sneaky target of THT. Okay, this is interesting. The Pelicans are in a weird spot. They have Zion. And obviously, Zion has had an interesting season. He hasn't stepped on the court for the Pelicans this season. I don't think they're getting De'Aaron Fox because I don't think the Kings are willing to trade him. Colin Sexton would be an interesting get, but obviously he's recovering from an injury as well. Man, honestly, I don't know who these guys get. And I don't think THT is the guy that they should get. I don't know who the Pelicans get to make their team any better. Who they really need to get is Zion back, and then he elevates them to another level. But I don't know who these guys get. The New York Knicks. Dream target of DeJounte Murray. I don't think he goes. Goran Dragic. I think that is a good move. And Reggie Bullock. Oh, Reggie Bullock. I don't know if he's moving from the Mavs. I don't know if the Mavs will be willing to give him up. Goran Dragic is interesting, man, because Goran Dragic, man, like, the Knicks are so weird because they have Derrick Rose, they have Kemba, who they're not really playing. Do they add another vet guard like Goran Dragic, and does he realistically elevate the Knicks? Like, I don't know what these guys do. They made a couple moves in the offseason. Do they move Evan Fournier potentially? He's recently started to like raise his trade value with the way he's been playing recently. So do they trade him for someone? I don't know who these guys get. I really don't. The Thunder. Dream target of Gary Trent. Realistic target of Mo Bamba. And a sneaky target of Serge Ibaka. Okay. Alright. Serge is interesting. Serge is interesting because what they do, what the Thunder do, is they take Serge, let his contract they take his salary, right? And that's what a lot of these like rebuilding teams do, is they'll take the salary, the big salary that he's on, and then that's just, and he's on an, I may be wrong on this, but I believe he's on an expiring. So that he expires in the off season, gets some draft picks. The Thunder, they fucking love their draft picks. Do they get some Clippers picks and Serge, and then they send away? I don't know who they send away, but it could be interesting. I don't know. I don't know what the Thunder do. Do they need to do something? I don't think so, but you know, they could. The Magic, Patrick Williams. I don't think that's happening. Cedi Osman, maybe. Kelly Oubre, interesting. Okay, all right, let's talk about this. I don't think Kelly Oubre goes, purely because I don't think he fits the timeline of the Magic. I think that the Magic do send out Terrence Ross, who could go to the Cavs for a Cedi Osman. That could be interesting, or I don't think it'll happen, but do you make a deal to the Bulls for Patrick? I just don't think that's going to happen. Cedi Osman is probably the only one I think that's happening. I don't think it may be him, but I do think that something is going to happen at the Magic, whether that be Gary Harris, whether that be Terrence Ross, or maybe both of them moving to a contending team. The Sixers, dream target Bradley Beal, realistic target Bogdanovich, sneaky target Joe Ingles. Okay. As a Wizards fan, sure. Trade Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal is up for a super max extension in the offseason. And I don't know whether or not, honestly, I'm in two minds, whether or not he's worth the 200 plus mil, or whether or not we have to get something for him. Let's say it's a deal where Bradley Beal goes to the Sixers, and then the Wizards get back Ben Simmons. It leaves the Wizards in an interesting spot, because then you're stuck with a team that realistically doesn't get a lot of buckets. You look at who they have left after Bradley Beal goes, and I don't think that's something the Wizards want to do. Bogdanovich is interesting, and I think that he definitely does elevate the Sixers. Obviously, the Sixers are contenders this season. I think that they do need to make a trade to make that solidified, with Embiid playing the way that he is. And obviously, if Ben is not going to play this season, I just don't know. I don't know what the Sixers do. Whether or not I don't think Ben Simmons is leaving before the trade deadline, or even at the trade deadline. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think that Daryl Morey is very content with just having him sit there until next offseason. Maybe Joe Ingles is an interesting shout as well. I don't know. But yeah, the Sixers are an interesting prospect going into this trade deadline. The Phoenix Suns, dream target of Josh Hart, Thaddeus Young, okay, and Harrison Barnes. Okay, let's be real here. Harrison Barnes would be great for the Suns, and he would elevate them to genuine championship contention. They're already there, but genuinely these guys could go all the way if they manage to pull off a Harrison Barnes trade. What do they do to get that? I don't know, but it would be interesting. Suns, maybe, you know, you look at the Suns, you think, oh man, what are these guys gonna do? It could be interesting. The Trailblazers, Miles Turner, Derek White, and Mitchell Robinson. I think Mitchell Robinson would be probably, out of these three picks, the most interesting one for the Blazers to get. But then, does it even make sense? Like, does he raise the ceiling of the Blazers? The Blazers are in a weird spot, man. Like, they're not... Maybe they get in the play-in, maybe they don't. But they're not going to do anything. Does Miles Turner raise the ceiling for this team right now? Maybe. When you get Lillard back and when you get CJ back, that is a three of Miles Turner, Dame Lillard, and CJ McCollum really gonna prove to Dame that these guys are looking for championships? I don't think so. But it'll be interesting to see what they do. The Kings. Man, here we go. Domantas Sabonis, Tobias Harris, and Jordan Nwora. Okay. Let's talk about Domantas Sabonis to the Kings. I don't think it would take take a lot for the Pacers to give away Domantas Sabonis. And I think that the Kings have the assets to do that. I do believe that the Kings, I don't think that Buddy Hield is going anywhere. I think maybe put Alex Len in that package as well? And is that becoming enticing to the Pacers? I don't know, but I do think that Sabonis is a good fit for the Kings. The Kings are a team to look out for this trade deadline, 100%. The Spurs, PJ Washington, Evan Fournier, Kristaps Porzingis. I don't think any of these guys do anything for the Spurs. As I said, I don't know if these guys are rebuilding, selling, what they're doing, but they're in a weird spot of they're not going to win a chip. They might be in the play-in and they're not rebuilding. So like, what are they doing? And I don't think any of these three guys do anything in terms of changing their fortunes. Therefore, yeah, I don't know what they're doing. The Toronto Raptors, dream target of Jakob Poeltl, realistic target of Montrezl Harrell, that's interesting, and a sneaky target of Kobe White. Okay. Alright, well obviously the Raptors are an interesting team. I don't think anyone expected them to be as good as they have been this season. I do think that they may be able to pull off a big time trade if they're serious about a deep playoff run. Because I do think that Pascal Siakam is a realistic target for them to move, and they could get something genuinely like all-star caliber level for Pascal if they are looking to move him, whether or not they want to. They have a picture there of Christian Wood next to Jakob Poeltl. Does Christian Wood elevate this team? I think he does. Montrezl Harrell is interesting because he'll be looking to get a bag, and I do think that, I don't know, he'll be a good rotational piece for them. Does he raise the ceiling? I don't think so. So I don't know what the Raptors do. I genuinely think that they have the assets to make a big swing, but whether or not they'll do it, I don't know. The Utah Jazz, okay. Jeremy Grant, Justin Holiday, and Goga Bitadze. Okay. Man, the Jazz are interesting, man, because everybody knows that the Jazz are going to have a good normal season, and then in the postseason just crumble. Like, does Jeremy Grant move there to be the third guy? What the Jazz need genuinely is someone else to defend, because you can't rely on Rudy Gobert to guard 1 through 5. Right? When you get to the postseason, that's just not a realistic defensive approach to make. And while yes, he can do that, the man needs help, and I don't think you get that necessarily with, man, Jeremy Grant's so interesting because he realistically could be a fantastic player for the Jazz, but as I said, I don't think he wants to be the third guy. I think he wants to be one of the main options in the offense, and I don't think he gets that with Donovan Mitchell being at the Jazz. Can he work? Yes. Will it work? I don't know. Justin Holiday is an interesting shout as well. I think it'd be a good rotational pick for them, but they need to do something. They need a wing that can defend. Who that wing that can defend is, I don't know, and I don't think it's Jeremy Grant, but whoever it is, the Jazz definitely need to do something if they want to be in contention for like the conference finals, maybe even the finals. Last but not least, the Washington Wizards, a dream target of John Collins, a realistic target of Eric Gordon, and a sneaky target of Grant Williams from the Celtics. All right, this is interesting because I do think that this has sort of changed in the last couple of days. Reports have come out saying that everybody's on the trade block bar Bradley Beal. The thing with Bradley Beal is I don't think that he is your number 1 guy on a team. I think he can work as the number 2 guy on your team. I don't think he works as the 1 guy. John Collins, dream target, maybe. We know that John Collins wants to be one of the main options in an offense, and I don't think he's realistically getting that at Atlanta. Will he get that at the Wizards? Maybe. Probably he'd be the number 2 guy. But we have Kyle Kuzma. Does John Collins elevate the ceiling for the Wizards? Yes. What will it take to get rid of him? Well, sorry, what will it take to get him? You'd probably have to put Kuzma in a trade. You'd have to put either Denny or Rui into that, and I don't think that the GM wants to do that. I just don't know how this does anything. Eric Gordon, I don't think that does anything for the Wizards. I genuinely don't. I don't think that as he needs to go to a championship contending team, and the Wizards just aren't that. Grant Williams is an interesting one from the Celtics, but then we have too many power forwards. We need, realistically, a point guard and a small forward. We don't have a starting small forward. I know that we have KCP, but I don't think he's at the caliber of starter. I think he's a great guy to come off the bench and get some buckets, but I don't think he is like a starting 3. And that's something that the Wizards need. Maybe Eric Gordon is that guy to be the starting 3, but I just don't think he is. I don't think that that's the case. I don't know what the Wizards need to do. The Wizards need shooting. They need outside shooting because we've been bricking it from 3. But man, I don't know. The Wizards will do something. There have been talks of Domantas Sabonis, but I don't think Domantas Sabonis raises the ceiling for this team. I don't think that Jeremy Grant raises the ceiling for this team either. I don't know what the Wizards do, but something's going to happen, and I don't know what it is. Alright, well that is every NBA team's top 3 trade deadline targets. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, comment down below. What do you think of your favorite team's top 3 trade deadline targets as reported by Bleacher Report and Greg Schwartz? Do you agree with them? Do you not? Who is your realistic trade target for your NBA team? Leave it in the comment section down below. Click subscribe to Hooper's Corner for more content just like this one. I'll see you guys next time. See you later.